Hello and welcome to the Sporting Crypto podcast. Another episode, this time with the co-founder and CEO of Pred, Amit Mahensaria. Amit, how are you doing?
All good, Pet. Really delighted to be here.
We've had so many calls and I'm glad we're finally getting one recorded because I think there's some value in them, right?
Yes. In fact, I've been talking to you, I don't remember, now close to a year, picking your brains, building this company. And finally, we are there to your audience.
Well, yeah, thank you. And why don't you start by giving us a bit of a rundown on you and your background as an entrepreneur, because I think you have a really fascinating journey and what's brought you to building this current product.
So maybe I'll tell you what truly I am. I'm actually a sports trader. I've been trading on sports for past 22 years. And I love sports puzzles. I'm a man of probabilities. Everything that you bring to me, I think in terms of probabilities. And I can assign a probability to that. And for the past 7 years, I've also been running a sports community. In fact, I used to earlier trade on sportsbooks. And I was slightly frustrated with the experience. They'll ban me some places. There'll be VIX in some places. So I built my own community of 10 friends and we used to do peer-to-peer. And it grew to 200 people. So that for running past 7 years, that brought me to building this exchange. But all this was as a hobby, which I really wanted to do. Professionally, initial part of my career, around 7 years, I was a VC fund manager, investing into tech and consumer startups. Then I've always been in Web 2, which is non-crypto, and then had 2 startups. My first startup couldn't work. Learned the lesson hard way that it's easy to build tech, but tough to get adoption. Had to shut it down. Built my second startup. Started my second startup in 2014. Built it from first principles. Scaled it to decent heights. And in 2021, it got acquired by a large company, Upgrad, for around $20 million. That gave me my personal exit. And I joined Upgrad as CEO of their consumer division. In fact, this whole experience of building a consumer startup and scaling it globally taught me one thing. It's a very simple thing. Everyone talks about it. Build consumer products that users love. Give them that experience. Build for one small set of users. And if they love your product, it's done. So that's been my journey as a founder. And this is the first time I'm building in Web3. And this is the first time I'm actually building for my passion, which I relate to. I visualize it. My previous startups were a tech startup in education domain.
And then can you give us a little bit of an overview on what the business is, so like what Pred is and how you kind of came to the idea? I really want to pull on the thread of you being a sports enthusiast, a man of probabilities, as you put it, and kind of arriving at the conclusion that something needs to be built here.
Look at any sector, and I'll go slightly, historical or slightly traditional. Look at any sector. What technology has really done is disrupt the middlemen. Take the example of Uber, take the example of Amazon or any other sector. Gradually, middlemen are being disrupted. I think sports is one of the last frontier where there's a big middleman sitting between 2 different parties. Like, let's say if you want to put a trade and you are favoring Knicks and I'm favoring Spurs, we both will go to a sports book and we'll pay a big wig to the sportsbook who's a middleman sitting there. And this hurts. A very simple example, though I don't do toss and gambling, but if you go and try to put a trade on toss winning, for $100, you'll get $180. The sportsbook would keep the remaining money. For a counterparty also, the sportsbook does that same thing. So sportsbook disruption was bound to happen. I think it's high time that this middleman is getting disrupted. And that prompted me to start Pred. How do I disrupt these sportsbook who are the middlemen into the industry? And how do I truly build a peer-to-peer exchange? So what Pred is, it's a sports native peer-to-peer exchange. I'm a tech platform which just wants to match people with 2 differing views. Let them get the best prices. If you are putting a price of X, the second person who's your counterparty also gets the price X. And Pred as a middleman, like any exchange, would charge a very small fees to it because we don't take counterparty risk.
And so obviously there's companies that are doing this, but not specific to sports, right? We've got Kalshi, Polymarket, Novig, there's Myriad, there's Limitless, all have their own kind of quirks that makes them a bit different. Why do you think there needs to be something specific to sports here? I mean, in the UK and Europe, we have Betfair Exchange, we have Smarkets. I believe in the US, there's Profit Exchange that have tried to build something similar and had to go by the really, and Novig the same, had to get the right licenses for the right regs. Why does sports need an exchange?
Again, as analogy I like to give, you don't buy your glasses from Amazon. You buy it from Smart Glass, or there are a lot of players like Mr. Specs. These kind of players, because glass buying or spectacles buying is a very unique and a different experience. Same goes for sports. Sports has a very different UX. I'll tell you where I come from. If you look into sports, 70% of the trading happens on match day and in live sports. It doesn't happen if there's a, let's say if there's a FIFA World Cup. You'll never bet onto a match which is after 3 days. All these general purpose prediction market like Polymarket and Kalshi are more designed for event-based trading. If there's an event that's happening in future, you predict that. They are not designed for live engagement-based trading, where sports is exactly that. Second is, in sports, there are a lot of correlated markets. And all the markets you need to see at one place. In a single match of, let's say, Knicks versus Spurs or Mexico versus South Africa, there'll be hundreds of markets which are correlated with each other. So the point that I'm making is sports needs its sport native UX, actually an exchange built only for sports. Now, sportsbook have solved it beautifully. I'm a big fan. Though I hate sportsbook, I say I started this company to disrupt sportsbook, but they've done a wonderful job in solving sports UX. So coming back to your question, I'll put into 3 or 4 buckets this whole market landscape. One is a general purpose prediction markets like Polymarket, Kalshi, Myred, everyone, which are general purpose prediction market, and they are also doing sports, and they are getting good volume from sports because the sportsbook structure is broken. But trust me, Pat, I don't think they'll win this final battle in sports. Second bucket is all the sportsbook, be it FanDuel, DraftKings, everyone realize, zooming ahead 5 years down the line, exchange is the dominant force. So they are launching their own prediction market. FanDuel has launched, DraftKings has launched, etc. This is the second bucket. And the third bucket is sports native prediction market or prediction exchanges, which you said Novig. There are smaller players like SXBet, there are challengers like Pred, and there are multiple more companies which are coming into this third bracket. So this is the whole market dynamics. I personally feel if I have to rate it in order, the sports native new age exchanges have the biggest chance to disrupt this. Then comes the prediction markets the sportsbook which are launching the prediction market. And third would be Polymarket and Kalshi, because their UX is not designed for sports. Sports is one of the vertical, and sports is such a large asset class that it needs its own native exchange. The only thing that I'll say, sometimes people ask me, hey, Betfair, FanDuel, DraftKings, they understand sports deep. And once they launch their own prediction exchange, focused on sports, how would you compete? I have a soft answer to it. They would be a big challenger, but those companies don't have it in their DNA to build a true exchange. And sometimes people underestimate companies' DNA. These sportsbook have for decades worked on the principle of pricing sports or being the counterparty. Their whole DNA is house. So I personally believe it's very tough to change a company's DNA and make it an unbiased exchange.
Can we go into a little bit about it's a piece I wrote about who the customer is here, right? Because I think there is a very short, sharp answer, which is this is gambling, right? And it is for gamblers. But I've got a lot of friends that bet, just as retail bettors, and they do it for fun. They're not like professionals, enthusiasts, or traders, they all use sportsbooks. I know very few people that use exchanges. And so I think there is a consumer difference as well here that someone like Pred is building for. And so could you just kind of go into a little bit of like the type of person that you're building this for versus like the type of person that a William Hill is building their sportsbook for?
Again, using the bucket analogy, trying to break customers into trying to put them into different buckets. There are 2 or 3 kind of main customers. One is an occasional customer. Let's say you are going to watch a FIFA World Cup and you'll punt on a team or you'll place a trade on a team and you are occasional. Honestly, prices don't matter. The vig of the sportsbook don't matter to an occasional customer or a user who does it once in a month. If you are getting a odds of 1:5 or 1:5.5, you don't care. You want to place a thing. The only thing is simplicity, single click UX. That is one kind of customer which will still go to sportsbook. The distribution advantage, the ease of use advantage. The second category, which is the largest pet, is frequent sports traders. These frequent sports traders come from 2 dimensions. One, they are fans. They follow a sport, they live that sport, breathe that sport, and they like to place their opinions on the sportsbook or prediction market. Second is analysts. Like I come from the second bucket, which is calculating probabilities. You always feel you can calculate the probabilities better, the pricing better, and you will frequently make. Both these are not professional. They have some day job, they do something else, but they view sports as a form of entertainment. This set of customer is very conscious about price, and this set of customer really loathes sportbook. They always say, hey, no wonder the house wins. This is the set that I am building for. Get those users who care about price, because prices or wins compound over time, and give them a better product. Now, when I'm designing Pred, I'm designing for these users. They need a simplistic UX. So I'm building a sports native UX, which would be very similar to a sportsbook. In 2 clicks, you can place a trade. It's simple, it's intuitive. But behind the scenes, rather than a house giving you prices, there's an exchange, peer-to-peer exchange, which gives you best prices. This is the set of people that I'm building for. Third customer is sharps and hedge funds or OTC desks. These would always want things in size. So these customers always would be going partly to Pred, partly to Polymarket Kalshi, because they can get a large size there, and partly to sportsbook. This is the customer which is doing it as a profession. This is also something that I'm not building for.
And so let's dig into that third bit, right? You're not building for those people, right? But of course, there will be venues that are built around all of these exchanges that will take advantage of the liquidity that Pred has and the market that Pred has. And so on the B2B2B side, as in like if there's an intermediary, an OTC desk, another funnel that takes a hedge fund's money and distributes it across Pred, Kalshi, and so on and so forth, are you having to do anything specific to serve those aggregators or the platforms that are plugging into Pred?
So a couple of things. These people don't trade from front end. They need a API-based trading. Definitely, as our platform would grow, this would become a market segment. But when you are starting a company, it's very, very important to be focused on one set of user base. If you can build a beautiful product for a small set of user base, you can always think of expanding later. So as we'll have deeper liquidity, deeper size, these customers would come on. Right now, to be honest, these customers are going partly on Kalshi and Polymarket because they can place a single bet of $5 million. So that sizing is important. And second is, most of these customers don't trade mid-match. They trade before the thing. They'll see when the lines open, they'll take their positions. They wouldn't like to trade on an engagement-based platform. What Pred is building is focusing on live sports, is focusing on player engagements, and that live trading is mostly done by frequent traders, which I'm building for.
what are the specific things from a product design perspective that you need to build for live trading? If you're building a live trading exchange, and I see you getting the pen out there, maybe you've got an idea. What do you need to build for? If you're building for something that's, someone might trade in a game 7 times during a 90-minute football game, how different is that to building an exchange where someone just places a trade on a team to win the World Cup, right?
I got it. This is a very, very, personal question to me because I am a live sports trader. So I'll tell you, you don't care much about UX if you are saying who will win the World Cup. You'll go on a platform, the best prizes, whosoever is going, you'll take that prize. It's a one-time trade and you can repeat it, but it's still a one-time event-based trading. Now think about a live match where you are placing 7 trades. There are 2 key things that are very important. One is speed. That exchange needs to be super fast. You can't place a trade and then sign into a wallet and then see, like I'm talking about Poly Market, and then let the trade get happened. On that parameter, we are at least 8x faster than Poly Market in terms of trading experience. Second and more important is market resolution. If you've placed a trade, let's say, I'll give you an example, team to score first. There's a match between Germany and Argentina, and you are saying Argentina would score first. In the 4th minute, Argentina has put a goal. The market needs to resolve then and there. Not wait for the 90 minutes final whistle and then couple of hours of optimistic resolution for you to get your winning. We are working towards a structure where we would resolve the markets within 3 minutes, within the run of the play. If the event has happened in the 7th minute of the match, in 10th minute, you can get your winnings and place your second trade. So speed in trading experience, speed in resolution, most important. That is one. Second, in life, UX matters a lot. If you're watching a match, you consume the whole visual sports data on the platform itself. If you do stock-based trading, pet, you consume it elsewhere, you do research elsewhere, and you come on the exchange to place your trades. In sports, it works totally different. You consume the event on the exchange and then in live match, and you place your trades on the platform itself. Our platform, what we are doing, and we have done a lot of rework towards it, it's a 2-click trading. It'll take you 1.5 seconds to place a trade. Click, click, done. All the events for that particular match are visible on your screen visually, and you can choose and place a trade. This is one element, I think, which Stake, FanDuel, and others have done a wonderful job. Their UX really is designed for in-play. This live match betting or trading is known as in-play. They've designed their UX for this. And this is one aspect where Poly Market and Kalshi severely lack. So what we are doing is picking the UX for a sportsbook and giving the experience to users of exchange. That is the whole journey of Blade.
This podcast is sponsored by the Hedera Foundation. The most beloved sports brands understand that what fans want is simple, a reason to be passionate. The Hedera Foundation enables brands and fans to share their passion on-chain using the Hedera network, the most used sustainable enterprise-grade DLT for the decentralized economy. Let's talk a little bit about hedging, right? I think there's on the one hand, Kalshi have been saying, people can hedge on this platform, whilst also quite clearly targeting gamblers, right? And so I do have some sympathy for regulators in this space trying to find appropriate regulation where you have like a retail consumer, but also like an insurance broker who is trying to hedge their risk. There was a story that broke this week, though, about Osasuna in the Spanish La Liga, who, and I think it was misreported or misrepresented, but what they did is they used an insurance broker to hedge against the losses that they would get from getting relegated from La Liga. But the insurance broker used Kalshi to offset the risk, right? So that was the story, which is a really interesting use case, right? Of course, you're building for the in-play trader, but how big, interesting, and novel, and only really something you can do using a prediction market is this?
So I'll be speaking something against my sector, partly against my company. But see, Pet, for any product that you build, there can be 20 use cases. But you need to look at the proportion of that use case. Sometimes, let's say sports trading can save a life, can give you money to treat a child. But that doesn't mean that the platform was built for this. Among all the different prediction market, Osasuna is a very interesting stories, and these would happen. But I think insurance or hedging for sports would be less than 5%. Sports needs to be seen more as an entertainment product. And sometimes while I'm talking to regulators, I give them these examples that, hey, there are so many use cases. Think about insurance. And I don't know, Pet, whether you are aware. Insurance earlier long back was seen as gambling. It was banned in many countries. And today insurance is seen as a product. So I talk to regulators and I tell them, hey, people have used it for insurance. And Osasuna is a great story. But to be frank with you, it's less than 5%. It's less than 3%. So it will be an edge case. I don't see I would be actually rallying around this belief that sports trading would be an insurance, hedging, OTC product. It's really an entertainment product. A person who wants to predict and make an entertainment out of it, there's sports trading for him.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And I wrote about this when Kalshi had the, I forgot I think it was Point Capital.
Yeah, there was long back, Kalshi, Tariq published an article saying that, hey, this is the insurance that happened.
I wrote a piece about that in terms of how it was an awesome use case, but as you said, fringe, right? Maybe 5% of the market at best would be that. But I did see something interesting that someone sent me recently, which was someone using Kalshi to hedge free drinks at their bar.
Yeah, this is an interesting use case.
And I hadn't thought about it, but I'll try and explain it to the audience. But essentially, someone had built a. I'm trying to find the link here live. I should have done this before we jumped to the recording, but it's called bizhedge.com, and you can go on like something like a bar can do. So you have a win night promo, Chicago Cubs versus the Athletics, and you could do certain deals that if the Cubs win, that deal comes to fruition, and when you pay your bill after the game, you get this big discount. If they don't, then you pay whatever your usual fee is. And the way that these bars would be able to do that would be by taking the other side on a Kalshi or Polymarket or whatever it may be, and they're able to then not lose any money based on how much they would actually charge for that meal and drinks, which is really interesting. I mean, like, as far as like loss leading offers go in products where you get a free month, maybe if you join Pred, you get 3 months, no commission trading, whatever it may be, yada, yada, yada. I think this is actually pretty interesting. And again, I don't know if it's a fringe case, but again, it just adds to the complexity of how this thing is regulated, because if you are going to have businesses use it in this manner, in a decent amount, then it does get more difficult.
Businesses typically would like gradually to deal with an entity which is regulated. And there my call is, if I again zoom ahead 5 years down the line, the individual governments are slowly realizing that this is becoming a large sector prediction market and everyone is figuring out regulations for them. So things would fall in line. There are umpteen use cases. Like I'll tell you one. We ran a campaign where we were saying, hey, if this team wins, we'll give a grand prize to all its community. We had this campaign. Now, I was giving a prize of $100K and I wanted to hedge it. I put a negative thing on, I hedged that thing by a $10K trade. That if this team wins, I actually put a $10K on that team, and I was getting 100K. So those kind of scenarios, very similar to the restaurant example that you gave. There'll be numerous use cases. And it's very interesting that now people have an unbiased venue. Second beauty is it brings depth in liquidity. It brings depth in trading experience. So these things would continue to go.
I wanted to ask you a little bit recently about some of the resolution stuff that there's been scrutiny over for Polymarket and so on and so forth. Obviously, that's also another thing that binary results in sports don't really have an issue with, right? If you're looking at I think it's the famous one is whether or not Michael Saylor has sold Bitcoin or not on what day, and that's been very heavily contested, and obviously it goes to the UMA Oracle, and it's a whole story. And like every time you have one of these big resolution stories, it's just so much sunk costs, resource, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Yeah. And I suppose for you and Pred, you don't really have that issue, right? You need to find a data provider and so on and so forth, and go from there.
But I'll tell you my golden rule. And in sports also, there are edge cases. First and foremost rule for any prediction market, including Pred, is the rules should reflect the headline or the market name. It shouldn't be other way around. A normal user, when they come, they'll read the headline. The rule should always reflect that headline understanding, nothing else. If the rules don't reflect that, that's a big problem. Like the example that you were saying, will Michael Saylor sell BTC by 30th May? Now, this was the headline. Now, the rules were around announcements, etc. That's the problem. In sports, what people have done, sports is a very old industry. What people have done, they've perfected these things. The headlines exactly indicate what you are going to find in the rules. None of the users, and we track every user movement on our platform. I'll give you a stats. Close to around 7 to 8% of my user ever click on rules. They read the headline name and they place a trade. Now imagine 93% of the traders would be shafted by reading rules. And who don't read the rules? The frequent traders, the fans, the people who are not professionals. They don't have the time to go read the rules, analyze. They want to make a prediction. They want to make a trade. So this is very important. Second is, there's a concept which I always say is Lindy's effect, which is a thing which has been longer time in existence, has matured enough, has less edge cases, because people have found edge cases. In sports, when a match gets cancelled, there are multiple edge cases. There was recently an example where Denmark and Ukraine match got cancelled 2 days back. You go and read Polymarket Discord or Twitter, everyone was shouting because the rule was vague. You need to have very clear rule. The good part is, in sports, there's always a governing body which dictates the event's outcome. You need to say, hey, whatever that outcome is, because there are hundreds league, will follow that. And all the sportsbook, hundreds of sportsbook have been doing that. So the subjective resolution is less of a case in sports prediction market. It's a big problem in other.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And actually it makes it pretty easy for you to build specific things, right? Because these fringe cases are a lot less.
People burn money and then they say, hey, you didn't read the rules and you didn't read the line number 12th of the rules. Kalshi has 3-page documents of rules. I don't think even 5% of the users would download that doc and read the rules.
Yeah, I mean, you have it with sportsbooks on, I think, more fringe, more smaller markets like shots. And this player had a shot. No, that was a cross. And you have to, the thing that decides it is the data provider, right? And so I think there are a lot of things here that make it much easier to build an exchange that is focused on sport.
One more thing, Pet, in fact, while we are talking about resolution, sports has large Oracle providers. So there's Sports Radar, there's Genius Sports, and we've actually partnered with one of the top 2 Web2 Oracle providers, which have been doing this for decades. They've perfected the system of resolution and data providing and converting this Web2 data to Web3 to resolve all our markets transparently on chain. Now, this is a very powerful thing. Market resolution determines integrity of a prediction market. If you don't have these Oracle providers, like the biggest challenge of Polymarket right now is around the UMA protocol or the optimistic resolution. The Kalshi is there's a manual centralized resolution. If you don't have these things, the prediction market becoming a large asset class becomes challenging. I think in election, in finance, and in sports, these are the three things where these large oracle providers exist and which enables builders like us to build a large exchange.
We've talked a little bit about some of the other use cases, right? Hedging. Where else, and some of these weird kind of like business hedging cases, where else do you think that this could be used that we've not discussed already?
So we've discussed about this thing. There are two kinds of people. One is fans who want to take their positions. Second is traders who believe they have an edge. And sports is one of the asset classes, Pet, which combines emotion or passion with analytical abilities. If you are trading on BTC, it's mostly your analytical abilities or your belief. It's less emotion. If you are trading on Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, it's mostly you believe that you have an edge or you have a belief. Sports bring emotion and analytical ability. So that brings it very powerful. I think, that's the 90% use case serving to this population. Fringe use cases like we talked about hedging, we talked about OTC. There's a big asset class that's coming. Sports hedge funds or sports investors, which are slowly building companies to actually build a long-lasting return. Like they are commodity funds, similarly sports funds are being established. Now at least they have an unbiased venue. Earlier with sportsbook, they can't operate because they can't give a 10% VIC every time to a sportsbook who's the house.
What are your thoughts on the market makers in this space, right? I think just to close us out, this question that I've been thinking of quite a lot is, Kalshi offer this parlay product, and on the other end of the parlay is a market maker, and so you can't really replicate the way a sportsbook does a parlay using a market maker, because eventually a market maker will say, okay, this is killing me, I've done this wrong. It's much more harder to model when you have like 8 or 9 legs. Of course, you always want the pricing to reflect the risk, but I kind of struggle to see how you can replicate what is built for a centralized sportsbook in a decentralized way on an exchange. Do you think some of the market makers here are gonna get bitten in some of the risks they're taking? And then eventually that's obviously going to be passed on to consumers, right?
Parlays essentially is a sportsbook product. It's very popular in sportsbook. So exchanges are bringing parlays to their venue. But parlays by design is a sportsbook product. Close to 70% of the profits of a sportsbook come from parlays. Because people who are trading on parlays don't care about price. Like I was saying, there's a 10% commission, roughly around 8 to 10% commission that a sportsbook charges while cashing out or while placing a normal trade. On parlays, their margins are close to 50 to 60%. If let's say a trade should have given you 1:40 times odd, sportsbook will only give you 1:30, 1:28. So there's a big margin that they are taking because it's essentially a risky product. Second, no retail can be a counterparty to a parlay. In an exchange, what happens is there are a lot of people in a given match place limit orders on both sides. Like you might, in a Spurs versus Knicks, you might place a limit order on Knicks winning, I might place a limit order on Spurs winning. In a parlay, it's only market makers versus consumers, which is retail. So in that case, market makers essentially are behaving like a sports book. The only good part, Pet, is in a sportsbook, there's a single market maker and they can charge any pricing. As this industry would mature, there'll be multiple market makers that will come. And then that competition between market makers would drive the parlay's price down.
And then the difficulty becomes the routing and the flows and the funds, how quickly you can match those, which I think is another thing, right?
It's challenging, and I don't think exchanges today can truly disrupt the pricing of a sportsbook by 10x in a parlay. We are doing it in a singles event in all the live events, but in a parlays, since the opposite side is a market maker, they'll definitely put a big fat margin on their risk. It will slowly evolve. As sportsbook would continue to die, more users would come on an exchange which has a native UX of sports. I think parlays would gradually shift. But I'll say it's at least 1.5 to 3 years away when true shifting of parlays would happen on an exchange.
We obviously, I mean, I want to finish up with this question. We obviously saw this kind of idea of like death of the sportsbook when Betfair Exchange came about. And I know you didn't exactly like the parallel. What is the key difference between what we're seeing now compared to what we're seeing, what we saw with Betfair Exchange when it came to market?
I was talking to one of my market maker friends and who was very instrumental in building Betfair. So, and he was one of the largest market makers on Betfair, having an investment into their early days. So he actually was saying he's seen all this, that it's the exact deja vu feeling. What Betfair did to sportsbook at that time, prediction markets with a different name are doing to sportsbook today. So it's a very similar deja vu feeling. But there is a big difference. When Betfair 20 years back was operating, sometimes the timing is not right for a sector. The prediction market, what they are doing today, poly market, even Augur tried it big way. I met founder of Augur and I was really impressed, much more than anyone, poly market Kalshi, what they were doing. And the timing was not right. So Betfair had multiple problems. One was it was broken into different parts. Each state in US would have different regulations. Each country would have different regulations. You can't match a user from a country A to country B. You can't match a user from a state A in US to state B. Now, these actually broke down the experience. Second, partly I'll say, is the choice. Sometimes you see sportsbook making so much money, Betfair got distracted. It was a tough journey. It opened its sportsbook. That's the day where Betfair lost its battle. The moment you get a sportsbook and you see your margins are 5x compared to an exchange, your focus shifts. So Betfair was on the right path. Maybe the timing was not there. If it would have persisted, Betfair would have been 10 times bigger than Polymarket Kalshi. The day Betfair moved into sportsbook, it started taking all its customer from an exchange to sportsbook. And then again, the founder DNA and everything, company DNA comes into play. It missed this bus. Now again, Betfair is launching, and I treat Betfair prediction market would be a worthy competitor. Like I really look up to Novig. I was talking to their founder, Jacob. I really look up to Betfair because these guys know sports native UX and they'll be worthy competitor. It's in their DNA to build the exchange.
I think we'll finish up on that. A really interesting market right now that is crossing the chasm of options trading, sports betting, sports trading.
And for FIFA World Cup.
With the World Cup coming in a very peculiar, in a really peculiar regulatory environment as well. Amit, where could people find out more about you if they want to chat to you and contact you and have a chat about what you're building at Pred?
We are active on socials, which is Twitter is our primary thing. We announce everything on Twitter. Like for the FIFA World Cup, since our costs are very low, we are building an exchange with a small focus team and building a global exchange. What we are doing is giving all our revenues and everything, our fundraising that we did from Excel and Coinbase, we are passing on to users to come and try Pred. So we are running a $200K campaign where we are giving this rewards to users who are trading FIFA World Cup on Pred. You can go to Twitter, Pred Official. I'll share you the link on Twitter, Pred Officials, and my also Twitter ID. We have a Telegram group which is really vibrant. People need to come to that Telegram group and see the action. People are talking sports. Again, sports is a very unique thing. It's traded in communities. You want to talk about it. You want to brag about it. So we have a very lively Telegram and Discord group where you can join, see the counter side, see what people are talking about, trading about. And that's where our website is pred.app, pred.app. So that's where you can do. It's a non-KYC where we follow a lot of checks, but it's a non-KYC platform. Come, deposit, and experience your first trade. And one of the good things, Pet, is people who've moved from poly market, have moved from Kalshi, are sticking. We just published an article. We have 86% retention rate of users. A user who comes, makes his first trade, doesn't go away. So that's a very powerful metric which gives me hope.
Well, congrats on the success so far. And if you're listening and you want to reach out to Amit, talk to him about a partnership or any idea like that, then we'll have all the links to reach him in the description below. But thank you so much, Amit, and we'll have more sport and crypto content for you soon. You can find us on newsletter.sportandcrypto.com to subscribe to the newsletter. Subscribe, like, and all that good stuff on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. And see you soon.